Now, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff has said that President Donald Trump has presented a 21-point plan to Arab and Islamic leaders to end the war in Gaza. Trump co-hosted a meeting with Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim, where leaders from Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia, Pakistan, Egypt and the UAE, as well as Saudi Arabia, discussed regional cooperation and security. During the meeting, Arab leaders highlighted the situation in Gaza and stressed upon the need to allow the entry of humanitarian aid. Moreover, they reiterated the common position, rejecting forced displacement and the need to allow the return of those who left, while emphasizing the need to ensure a comprehensive plan for construction in Gaza. The statement called for an immediate ceasefire and release of all hostages. It also underlined the importance of developing stabilization plan, ensuring calm in the West Bank and at Jerusalem's holy sites, as well as expressed support for reform efforts by the Palestinian Authority. U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff said he expected a breakthrough related to Gaza in the coming days. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his rejection of any recognition of a Palestinian state. He said he would condemn the recent recognitions by some nations in his address at the UNGA on Friday.
I will condemn those leaders who, instead of denouncing the murderers, rapists and child burners, want to give them a state in the heart of the land of Israel. This will not happen.
Speaking ahead of his flight to the U.S., Israeli Prime Minister also announced his trip would include a meeting with Donald Trump in Washington.
In Washington, I will meet for the fourth time, more than any other leader, with President Trump and discuss with him the great opportunities that our victories have brought, and also our need to complete the goals of the war. That means to return all our hostages, to defeat Hamas.
Now, furthermore, tensions erupted at sea after a convoy of 50 civilian boats called the Global Flotilla was attacked 30 nautical miles off the Greek island, prompting the United Nations to demand a probe into the matter. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni termed the attack reckless and dangerous and urged the flotilla to offload its aid in Cyprus and allow them to distribute by the local church. She also ordered the deployment of a Navy frigate to the flotilla's location. Spain followed suit, announcing that it will send a warship from Cartagena with all the necessary resources in case it was required to assist the flotilla and carry out a rescue operation. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the humanitarian toll continues to mount. At least 11 civilians were killed by Israeli strikes, while an Israeli soldier was killed in a Hamas sniper attack while maintaining guard post at an army encampment in Gaza. He has been identified as 21-year-old Staff Sergeant C.S. Demalash. So far, 912 Israeli soldiers have lost their lives in this war. All right, for more on this, we're joined by Chris Doyle from London. He is the director and lead spokesperson of Council for Arab-British Understanding. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One. Of course, there are questions over whether this time the U.S. envoy is being overly optimistic given past failures to get the deal done and end this war. But first, we need to understand what has changed to inspire such confidence by the U.S. envoy. What's your take on this?
Well, the US envoy was similarly confident back in April, June and July. So one has to be rather cautious about what he says. Steve Witkoff has been trying to secure that ceasefire deal. But remember, it was only a few weeks ago that Israeli forces bombed the Hamas negotiating team, albeit in a failed attempt, in Doha in Qatar. So that gives you a very strong understanding of where the Israeli government's position on all of this, that it is not looking for a ceasefire. It is looking to persist with its military operations in Gaza, to take over the entirety of Gaza City, where it's been pummeling the remaining buildings, such as they are. And there is no optimism on that front that this Israeli government is keen on securing some sort of ceasefire deal, which people would see as the necessary stage to at least stop the fighting, certainly not for just peace. Of course, the other part of that is the release of hostages, and Israeli public opinion is very clearly of the view that Netanyahu has rather abandoned those hostages, that that invasion of Gaza City, for example, will not bring about their release. But, at some point, to counter this, this war has to end. It's nearly 2 years. It has cost Israel a great deal in terms of funds, global goodwill. It's more isolated than ever. And that has also rubbed off on the United States, which is a leading ally. So there is motivation for the US administration, for President Trump, to bring this to an end. He wants to be seen as a deal maker. He wants to be able to do what other leaders haven't been able to do, to bring this to an end. But saying it and actually achieving it will be much harder.
Right, Mr. Doyle, so then would it be fair to say, and of course Trump's aspirations to get a Nobel Peace Prize aside, that nothing really has changed on ground?
Well, it hasn't changed on the ground. It's just getting worse. I mean, all the indicators are that famine within Gaza is spreading. That's a determination by a UN body, that most UN bodies, including the recent Commission of Inquiry, have designated this a genocide. So the bombing that is being carried out by Israel is really relentless. So in that stage, it hasn't changed. In that sense, it hasn't changed at all. But, I just wonder how much longer that Israel will stomach just continuing this relentless bombardment. There's not really a lot of, Hamas left as a credible fighting force within Gaza. And it could be that Israel will end military operations and just declare victory without any sort of deal, ceasefire deal. But then that leaves open the question, of course, of the hostages who, we don't know how many have left. We see the figure of 47, but how many are alive, I'm afraid, may not be very many.
Right, Mr. Doyle, of course, the Israeli forces have suffered losses as well. From what we do know, 912 Israeli soldiers have lost their lives. Of course, we heard from Netanyahu as well that he is going to condemn the recognition of a Palestinian state. And even though France, UK, Canada, Portugal, all of these nations are coming out now and officially recognizing the state of Palestine, what does it really do in real terms, in practical terms, to change the plight on ground in Gaza? That being said, of course, what perhaps would make the US envoy feel that a peace breakthrough is within reach?
Well, none of these recognitions is going to change the situation on the ground. I think that most of the leaders who've made this sort of call know that perfectly well. It has to be the first step as part of a strategy to bring this to an end. In my belief, it has to include various forms of sanctions on Israel. Hamas is already sanctioned up to the gills. So I think that is certainly one thing. As to quite, why the US envoy is so optimistic, is he genuinely optimistic, or is it to sound optimistic? Who knows? Maybe there is something. There is this 21-point plan that was you mentioned earlier, but nobody knows the exact details.
All right.
And who would have to agree to it and so forth.
All right. Well, Mr. Doyle, thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One with your insights on this.
Thank you.